How's it, guys? Alright, so if you're watching this video, then you pretty much are the most to resistance. My shitty little joke for the day. Okay, I've been out of touch for a while, really busy with motor development and some instruction, and I haven't been really getting to the point where I can put out these technical videos, but they are quite important. We've had some breakages and some guys struggling on trying to figure out why this is happening, and I've got some answers from the factory and I kind of agree with them. Alright, first thing that we're going to talk about will be the why the stud bolts are broken. Alright, so you undo the center bolt with the flange, up comes the propeller. Now, this is what makes the Nirvana system different, is that you have these stud bolts that secure into the pulley. Before I move on to why they're breaking, I want to tell you guys that if they do break, how do you take them out? Do not try, you actually get a stud spanner that you put in there. You can use something like a circuit pliers to try and make it work. But if you're just going to try and do that by putting it into these little tiny holes and trying to loosen it, you're going to struggle. What you need to do is you need to get something like a propane lighter. You've got to warm the stud before you try and unscrew it, because there's Loctite on these bolts. And it's a mess if you try and take them out without heating it up prior to taking it out. Okay, so these studs, they are quite strong. But the reason why guys are breaking them is because the propellers, brand new set of propellers, don't, it's kind of new, and it's so tight that it sometimes gets stuck. So you're forcing the propeller into place, right? That's what happens. Force the propeller into place, and now one comes out, hopefully, and what happens is you can't get this prop out, and you start using leverage on the outside of the prop to get it out. And what happens is there's a little bit of movement on the stud towards the opposite side, and you crack the stud bolts. They're not going to break immediately because they're strong, so they're going to break in flight when there's a lot of RPM that comes into play, and it's consistently wear and tear on those stud bolts. That's why it was such a unique situation when we start getting input from pilots that they didn't do anything wrong with it. Why are the stud bolts breaking? It just broke off in flight. And the first thing that I said was the fact that you've got these little round circles on the inside of the flange. It wasn't flush with the bolts when the center bolt was secured, and therefore it breaks during flight. But that's not always the situation. The other situation was it was secured, but they used leverage on the outside of the prop to eventually break them. Now, I've never experienced this myself, in the sense I've never broken some of these stud bolts, and that's part of the reason why I understood that these things are sensitive, and I always hit, if the prop was stuck, I always hit it on the inside here. That's also not a very smart technique to get the prop out, but that's how I've done it, and it's never broken the stud bolt. But what you need to do is you need to put some WD-40 or Q20 on the inside of these holes, that should pretty much lubricate the prop to be able to come out. Alright, so I reckon that's self-explanatory. Everybody goes like, oh, of course, that's it. That's what my reaction was as well. So I reckon if you guys are going to change the technique of taking the prop off when it's stuck, make sure the prop doesn't get stuck. That's going to solve that. Alright, spacers. Now, spacers is something new to the whole thing. The previous importer, Ryan Shaw to North America, always said that the engines were going to get buggered up by using these things. I actually disagree with him. I think that these things have been really great for our machines, simply because it increases the kilo thrust on these engines significantly, and therefore it's made it very popular. It makes the machine stronger in a sense. Same amount of horsepower, but the thrust goes up significantly. How much does it go up? Well, you're looking at, normally it puts out around 80 kilos of thrust. That could go up quite a bit. I'm not going to give you an exact figure, because some of the guys have been holding me to it. But the top end RPM increases quite a bit. So you'll have around 6,700 RPM to 6,800 RPM on a 3-blade Nirvana, and then you can get up to around 7,500 RPM with these spacers. Now that top section, that little bit at the top from 6.7 to 7.5, is where your significant amount of thrust comes in to play. And that's why this machine transforms into something that's got a max climb rate or is a really effective tandem machine, and it does put out a lot more than a Moster. It does. I have the Mosters on the field here. I've flown a lot with those pilots. I've sold these machines to Moster owners, so no need to argue with me about that. It's an actual fact. All right, so spacer problems. All right, so what happens is they put these spacers in, and now it's not lined up. This is you can see it actually fits into the flange. But the spacers were not made with the set of props. These are ordered differently, and therefore this outer line or edging doesn't line up always 100%. This is mass produced. Sometimes there's a bit of a difference. So what you do is you need to take a pencil grinder or something. If it doesn't fit, how do you know it doesn't fit? If you put the flange on, come on. If you put the flange on, there should be no space between the flange and the propeller. Usually you can see about a millimeter gap there if it doesn't fit. Now that gap is what you got to get out of the way. And you do that by using a pencil grinder or some sandpaper, and you just make sure that this edging is aligned all over the set with the spacers, and that should be fine. All right, what is the third topic I wanted to talk about? Oh yeah, all right. So let's say it doesn't fit. Okay, let's say it doesn't fit. Put the flange on. Okay, now the flange is a little bit this way, about a millimeter out, and now what they do is they use the center bolt to force it into place. Now that's a really bad idea, not because it's going to cause a problem on the center bolt, but it's because the metal on the pulley is very soft, and you strip the pulley if you use the center bolt to force everything into place. So that's it, 100% no. Don't use the pulley and the center bolt to try and force things into place. All right, so it's not as smooth. The 2-blade is not as smooth as the 3-blade. It does have a bit of a chop motion. A lot of guys think that the propellers are out of balance. It's not. It's just the fact that it's not as smooth, a little bit of chop, but a lot more thrust is the payoff at the end of the day for it. Okay, so guys, I've addressed all three topics: center bolt, spacers, and using the outer side of the propeller as leverage. Those three things, watch out for them. Don't break your stud bolts. If you break them, replace them by heating them up beforehand. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.